guys. Happy Friday, Fire Fam. Welcome to Burn It Down with Kim Brown. This is the safe space where we set a pressure to blaze because we know and understand not only is a better tomorrow possible, it is absolutely necessary. Shout out to the Eclectic Radical for blessing me with that gem. Welcome, everybody. I see all the flame emojis in the chat. Let's see who's checking in. What's going on? Latif. Of course, Latif is in here. Ursula's here. Big Teal, my baby, is in here. We got Courtney, the SLP, up in here. Courtney, we're going to be talking about Carolina here in just a second, guys. We have got a fantastic show for you today. Hello, Franny French. What's up, Anna Hart? Anna Hart, I just saw your message over on Patreon, guys. Before we get the show rolling. Couple of quick housekeeping, Let's housekeeping, shall we? Housekeeping announcements. So, if you are on Patreon, guess what, guys? Well, not just Patreon, but everybody, Fire Fam, we got our merch. The merch is here. It lives. We're so excited. And listen, if you are already a Patreon member, you guys get exclusive access for 1 week only to the merch before everybody else. If you go to patreon.com/BIDWKB, you can look for the merch link over there. We're going to get some more pieces in, but this is our preliminary offerings. And if he is still game, perhaps Tunde will turn on his camera and model some pieces for us at the end of the program. Let me see if y'all want to see that in the chat. I'm pretty sure y'all do want to see that in the chat. So make your opinions known right then and there. But yes, merch is here, guys. It's going to be on Patreon exclusively for a week, and then it'll be open for everybody else. So thank you all for your early support of everything. People have been asking about the merch, and I'm very excited to bring it to you. And shout out to Tunde. Tunde has worked very hard to bring us these merchandise offerings. So yes, check that out. Check that out when you can. Shout out to Black Magic. Thank you for your Cash App, dearest. Shout out to Patrick S. Thank you for your Cash App, dearest. And guys, of course, if you want to support the show materially, we are always here for that. Cash App, $BIDWKB, Venmo at BIDWKB, PayPal.me/BIDWKB. You know, this is independent Black woman-led media. You understand this, right? You understand. I ain't roll over here. Coca-Cola ain't write me no checks. Verizon ain't write me no checks to come over here and kick this real shit to y'all. So we understand we need the audience to support the media that you love and that supports you, because we talk about shit that affects us. And today's show is something that absolutely affects us. And some people might look at it on the surface and be like, it doesn't really affect it, but it kind of does. It kind of does. So guys, as you can see, our show headline today, the NFL is America, racist, capitalist, misogynist, and run by white man billionaires. Now, gang, we know the Super Bowl is next Sunday, the 13th. It's going to be the LA Rams taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. Who in the hell would have ever thought that would have been the case? But the NFL is absolutely a microcosm of America, right? It is run by wealthy, rich, very wealthy, obscenely wealthy white men who operate in these fiefdoms of their NFL stadiums. They have an entire franchise at their beck and call. They get to sit aloft in their sky suites and watch their Negro labor force, overwhelmingly Black labor force, bang each other ridiculous on the field, right? While the owners suffer no physical injuries whatsoever. But in addition to them being billionaires who exploit their labor forces, exploit their workers, they exploit the community. The NFL are not good stewards of the cities in which they reside in a variety of ways. When they come and build stadiums, they displace, they gentrify, and then they try to offer the residents that they just made move from their long-time generational homes. Hey, you want to come work at the stadium for $10 an hour, $8 an hour? Courtney, how much they charge, how much they pay people to work down at Bank of America Stadium in North Carolina? Let me know that. So the NFL is very bad. And truthfully, as much as we talk about abolishing police and abolishing the carceral system, we might want to consider abolishing the NFL as well, because they are harmful really in every aspect of the game and in the ways that they impact American cultural society. So you guys join me in welcoming today's guest. We are joined with justice journalist and occasional sports dude who writes for Deadspin His name is Chuck Modiano. You may recognize him. He has been on the show a time before. So thank you so much, Chuck, for joining me today. I'm very excited to have you on with me to talk about this.
I mean, it's always great to be on here. And before we talk any NFL, can we talk about that karate kick that you have in the opening frame of the show? I like it. I like it because you kick ass and take names. I love it. I love it. You didn't you didn't stretch a muscle, did you?
I did not, but don't pay too much attention to my ashy foot. My foot might have been a little ashy.
It was just fine.
In that particular photo. Shout out to Infinite Content. Infinite Content just ran us a cash app. Thank you so much, honey. Infinite Content said, Kim, did you see the stories I tagged you in on labor and other stuff on the Twitters? Enjoy your weekend. Thank you, Infinite Content. Yes, honey, I favorited a couple of them, and I appreciate that. And I will revisit them joints, but I appreciate you tagging me in stories on Twitter. And Chuck, let me just tag you in here right away, because obviously there's a lot of news hooks to the NFL in recent days. The upcoming Super Bowl is one, but the news of former Miami Dolphins head coach Brian Flores suing the league and some teams for hiring discrimination after it was revealed that Bill Belichick accidentally texted him, congratulations. And he was like, nigga, what are you talking about? You got the wrong Brian, Billy.
You got the wrong Brian.
But, and I want us to get to that later, because you have written something really good for Deadspin, where you dissect the Flores lawsuit and you circle back to points that you have been making, by the way. Chuck Modiano has been on this, guys. Chuck Modiano has been ringing the bell for talented black coaches in the NFL for a long time. And he has a piece out right now that talks about Jim Caldwell. And we're going to get to that a little later in the show, Chuck. But I want us to begin with the very top of the NFL. Yeah. Oh, also, Washington football team, PU, Washington football team keeps stinking it up everywhere. And we're going to get into the testimony of some of the former women employees of the now Washington Commanders franchise towards the end of the show as well. Because y'all have got to hear this shit. The shit that they was playing on TV. No, them women said some additional things that I think you guys absolutely need to hear. But Chuck Modiano, let's start with the owners. The owners of NFL franchises. CBS recently, CBS News published a piece earlier this year that out of the Forbes richest people, they extrapolated the richest NFL owners. I think there's going to be A1 there, Tunde. And the richest owner is the owner of the Carolina Panthers. I did not know that, Chuck Modiano. Was that news to you when you heard that?
I mean, a little bit, only because I had Steve Ballmer, the owner of the NBA's Clippers, in my head, who makes like $90 billion, formerly from Microsoft. So, I mean, when you add in all of the owners of sports in the Forbes 400, you're talking about 43 people. And they all make more than Oprah, by the way, who regular people consider really wealthy at $2.6 billion. But Oprah in this class is actually like petty cash in the couch. Like we have to understand this is a whole new stratosphere. If you multiplied Oprah by 32 teams, she wouldn't make the amount that Steve Ballmer makes.
So according to Forbes, there are only 4 owners in the NFL who are worth more than $8 billion. Besides Tepper, Mr. Tepper is the owner of the Carolina Panthers. We also have Jerry Jones, who's slumming it at $8.9 billion. By the way, Mr. Tepper is worth... See, this is a little confusing. So, okay, he's worth $14.5 billion. That makes him the 142nd richest person in the world. You needed to know that. Thank you, CBS, for telling me that. But Tepper has $14.5 billion. Jerry Jones is slumming it with only $9 billion. We're talking about exorbitant amounts of money. This is just their net worth. When we're talking about how much these franchises generate, Chuck, what kind of money? What kind of money are we talking about?
I mean, it's unfathomable. And if you want a historical view, in the United States in mid-'80s, there were only 10 billionaires in America. And Reagan was the first to do an incredible amount of deregulation. Clinton would follow in the next decade. And a lot of that deregulation plus tech companies just opened up like wildfire. So now you have 614 billionaires in America. And it's unfair to just cut it off at billionaire. When you make 90 billion like Steve Ballmer, it's It's unfathomable. It's a ridiculous amount of money. And the reason I stress this is that a lot of times I hear when we talk about racial equity, I hear some people make the argument in sports, we need more black billionaires. And I'm like, I don't think you understand the dynamics, the monetary dynamics here. The richest black person you could find in America is not even barely cracking the top 400 billionaires in America. So, even if you were this hyper capitalist, it's still a bad idea economically. It's crazy how rich these billionaires are. It's crazy.
And relative to I guess the way that they operate as owners, as employers, some people would even argue that, hey, when we're talking about the power structure, or rather the power dynamics between owners and players, at the end of the day, we're essentially still talking about billionaires versus millionaires. Let me get your take, Chuck. Are NFL players workers in your opinion? Are they workers that the average working person should stand by when they encounter labor issues?
So you're gonna ask me that question. I get a lot of heat for my answer. I'm gonna tell you right now because why are you defending millionaires? It's not that I'm defending millionaires. I'm defending a power dynamic, and that power dynamic between that multi-billionaire and the control over say a player, NFL player, is a very similar power dynamic at a much smaller scale that happens in America everywhere. So if you're taking the NFL, for example, the NFL has players on non-guaranteed contracts. They could cut that contract at any year. You could have a 4-year contract that if you hurt your knee in year 2, I can cut you. And what I think a lot of people don't know is the majority of NFL players make minimum salary. I mean, the top 5 or 6 players, they make multi-millions. The quarterbacks make a whole lot. But most are making minimum wage salaries. The average length of employment is 2.5 years. So you're talking about someone who spent their entire childhood, high school, and college devoted to making the NFL. They play for an average of 2.5 years. They have concussions. They have messed up limbs. They're getting their disability cut through this ridiculous collective bargaining agreement that does not help them out. And their lives become not only like regular folks who are never millionaires, but worse because they have these disabilities. So I align with those individuals because I talk to a lot of the spouses who are taking care of their husbands, and they're afraid that if they leave the stove on, they may set a fire because their brain isn't right. And if you hear the more stories you hear that they're really more like us.
Thank you for that, Chuck. Shout out to Franny French. Thank you so much for your super chat, Franny. Franny says, super chat for Super Ken. Thank you, baby girl. Thank you so much. I mean, Chuck, I am inclined to agree with you because, like the average person, especially people who work on their feet, people who do hard labor, these NFL players do suffer because of their profession, right? I mean, in these long-term consequences can cost them from a healthcare perspective, from a future income perspective, to keep them out of bankruptcy, right? I mean, there's a lot of adversities that former players continue to face, regardless, really, of how much money they made. But like you said, most of them are not sitting on 20 million in the bank once they leave the league.
No, they're really not. They're really not. And like I said, the more stories you hear, it's bad because a lot of players are on disability. They can't find jobs, but they're being denied disability. And if you go 2 years ago to a sham collective bargaining agreement that was rammed through during COVID by also a corrupt NFL Players Association, I might add, what happened is 400 players were cut off future disability benefits. And what that means is they used to have to go through the normal channels to get disability that anybody else had to go through. And then they switched that you had to go through the NFL doctors. Well, the NFL doctors aren't in the business of giving away money. So they'll say, this is no good. And then on top of that, you might have heard there are these race norming pieces. So if someone had a concussion and a black person had a concussion, they would essentially say, we're going to adjust it and your IQ has to be even lower because we think black people are stupid. And this was in the writing, and they were denying disability benefits of people getting concussions because they were saying, oh, you are already stupid. I'm simplifying it, but that's exactly what was being done. So the racism isn't just when they're playing, the racism continues the rest of their lives. And then the disabilities happens to all players the rest of their lives.
Yeah, the racism and the continued exploitation
Yeah,
of the workers, even after they are unable to still produce that labor. The NFL, regardless of the billions that these players produce for the billionaire owners, they are still stingy, miserly with the purse strings when it comes to taking
yeah.
care of these men once their careers have ended. But I wanted to talk about. Oh, I wanted to put a pin in the worker dynamic of NFL owners, franchise
Mhm.
owners. I wanted to come back to that, but I wanted to get back to the other ways in which the NFL is generally harmful
Yeah,
to the community in very
yeah.
tangible ways. Tunde, if we could please take a look at here's a couple of examples. Pop up A4 if you could for me, please. So I think it was back in 2014 when the Atlanta Falcons were searching for a new location to build the Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Yeah.
It turns out that two historically black churches in Atlanta had to be literally razed to the ground in order to make way for the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And this is very common. You don't really hear about white churches and white neighborhoods being targeted by the NFL for stadium construction, but it's always black areas. And Tuna, if you could please cue up A5, because as we look ahead to the Super Bowl coming up next Sunday, all eyes are going to be on Los Angeles, and I have a number of cultural critiques that I would like to get your take on here, Chuck Modiano, because it's so wild to me that artists like Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre, they always screaming out Los Angeles, Inglewood, always up to no good. Well, y'all about to sing and dance for Roger Goodell in the NFL in Inglewood, a place that experienced high levels of gentrification and displacement of its black and brown residents in order to accommodate the $5 billion stadium there in SoFi Stadium. So let's take a look at this clip from a YouTube channel called The Union, which I believe published this is a couple of years old, but they were interviewing some Inglewood residents, long-term Inglewood residents, about the impact that the stadium has already borne upon their community. Let's take a look at that.
Over the past couple of years, I've seen Inglewood get different restaurants, different shops, different customers. Restaurants like Five Guys and Chipotle, they don't fit in Inglewood because that's the kind of food we would say we have to go to the mall for. And now it feels like Inglewood is turning into a mall. The setting is changing. Every day they're working on a different street, a different light post that didn't work back then, different potholes. Well, it's every day I see it now. It's that common. And it is different than back then because they were never fixing it maybe 10, 15 years ago. I've seen apartments that are way nicer than the surrounding apartments. I've seen old stores being taken down and new stores coming up like Gap. That makes me feel like before the news of the stadium and all the other plans that they're doing, that we weren't wanted, we weren't interesting, we weren't, we were just another low income community. They didn't fund into as much. But now it's more just to make a profit. It's positive if it's more our own communities improving and attracting these other businesses, but it seems as if they're just gonna move us out.
So Inglewood's seeing a phase of gentrification. Um, we're seeing a lot of developers going in there, purchasing homes and basically selling it for a higher profit. The problem with that is that it pushes out low-income residents of Inglewood. Traditionally, people that have lived there for many decades, several generations, sometimes they're used to the city, the culture. When you have developers moving in and repricing neighborhoods, it brings in a different demographic. Several years ago, 2012, 2013, you could buy a house in Inglewood. I saw stuff selling as low as $200,000, 3 bedrooms, 2 bath. A lot of $300,000 homes were available before the stadium announcement. As soon as the stadium was announced, we saw those prices jump to 500, 600. Right? A lot of developers moved in and started fixing those up and selling them for maybe 700,000 or 800,000. I think the next 5 or 10 years, you'll see homes, and you're seeing that kind of now. You'll see homes pushing $1 million, just like they do in Torrance.
Chuck Modiano, This is very much sticking to the script, right? Anytime that there is land or property or areas that wealthy white folks want to get their hands on, it ain't no thing to tell tell these black and brown people that they
Yeah.
have got to go, and it is a long term game plan. Why is this so insidious, and why do elected officials in these areas continue to go for this? I can't even call it an okey doke because surely they have to know that this is going to happen because this is what happens. Yes. So let me get your thoughts on that, Chuck.
Yeah, it's what happens, and everything we just watched there is the norm of what happens. If you go through history, when owners build stadiums, and most of the time using hundreds of millions of taxpayer money, I might add. In this case, Stan Kroenke is getting a 100 million in tax breaks. They go through black and brown communities. It happened in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center. That always happens, and it happens because you can get away with it. Because if you try to do this in a white community, the white communities will say hell no. So you always see stadiums built destroying black and brown communities. And it's not that dissimilar to even where pipelines are built. You know, I was in Standing Rock, and in Standing Rock, the reason that pipeline came through Standing Rock is the other people in North Dakota, in the white communities, they tried to do it, and they said, hell no, you're not doing a pipeline here. And they said, okay, we're going to go in the indigenous reservation then. So no matter what happens, it's talking about the lack of political clout and the lack of power that allows these communities to be being destroyed.
Shout out to Rain Desud. Thank you so much, dearest, for your super chat. She said that those are her ties because she has missed us live. We love you, Rain. Thank you so much. And shout out to Toby Swoley. Toby, I did see the story that you sent me about Iowa lifting its mask. We're going to talk about that next week, dearest. So thank you so much for y'all's support. And Chuck, you know, even the lie that gets sold by the billionaire class, that the political class just takes up and runs with it, that the media class goes and tries to sell and recycle to us. When we look at the actual economic impact of stadiums, it is actually very nil, if not even a detriment to the communities in which they are built. You have already displaced people from their homes, and then you offer them not even barely even living wage jobs, if ever that, to come work at the stadium. Don't you want to work at Raven Stadium? It's so malicious at this point, but that's just another way that the NFL billionaires exploit another set of workers, right? They exploit their stadium workers to no extent. By the way, I was looking at jobs at Bank of America Stadium for like dishwashers and cooks. They don't pay very good wages. Meanwhile, their owner made $14.5 billion, or is worth $14.5 billion. And when you mention Los Angeles, and in the Barclays Center, because we're talking about SoFi Stadium where there was displacement, and Barclays Center where there was also black and brown displacement. I see Jay-Z here both places because I know Jay-Z was ringing that Barclays Center bell big time. And of course, his partnership with Roc Nation in the NFL has got Snoop Dogg and Dre and Mary J. Blige performing and Eminem performing at halftime of the Super Bowl the next Sunday. So I don't like Jay-Z. He's not good for us.
I hear he's playing chess.
That right. Yes, he is playing chess. I guess the rest of us is just stuck back here playing checkers. I apologize for that not actually being a question, more just a statement, Chuck. But I want us to also take a look. Speaking of SoFi Stadium, A6 is going to be what it is today. So, guys, we have had people, obviously activists from Los Angeles, come on here and talk about the deplorable way in which housing encampments are razed, people's belongings, documents, food, tents, housing, shelter, all has been routinely targeted for trash, right? And with the Super Bowl fast approaching, you can assume that the city of Inglewood is also doing the same thing, and they totally are. Check out this piece from CBS Los Angeles.
This grassy spot looks clear and clean now, but Jenny Dominguez, who works in the plaza across the street, says before today, it was a massive homeless encampment.
Full of tents, trash. How many people? Maybe like around, I would say 60 people. was a lot of people.
Early Monday, business neighbors told us they watched as CHP came in and this area was swept. TMZ got these photos of crews, some in hazmat suits, loading trucks just off the 405 freeway at Century Boulevard. Some store owners tell us it's been an encampment for years and they're glad it's gone.
Finally, after a long time, they clear it. They should have done it like 5-10 years ago.
But to others, the fact it only happened 3 weeks before the Super Bowl at one of the main exits fans will use to get to SoFi Stadium.
That is insulting and it's very sad.
Some locals and housing advocates are criticizing the timing. Advocacy group Services Not Sweeps sent us a statement saying, in part, this is the same strategy politicians use anytime a major event comes to LA, whether it's the Super Bowl or the Oscars or the Olympics. They use cops and criminalization to sweep away the evidence of their failure to address Los Angeles's affordable housing crisis. Nicole Randolph, who is homeless, sadly told us she knows many want people like her to disappear.
We don't have too many options. Like, it's either on the streets, on the sidewalks, or on somebody's, in front of somebody's business. And it's real embarrassing. And we don't want to be out here like that, We want our city to look good. We want to look good.
But she and other unhoused people don't want out of sight.
I knew it was coming.
To also be out of mind.
We do need help.
Now, there is another homeless encampment in the area where residents there told us they have been notified they will be moved next week. In Inglewood, I'm Lori Perez. Back to you.
Chuck, all I see is power and money being mobilized against the most vulnerable. Even from the earlier clip that we saw where the brothers were talking about the gentrification of Inglewood and how housing is becoming unaffordable in their community. And that is violence, yes? I mean, forcibly removing people from where they live and making it unaffordable for them to remain. And for people who are unhoused, using the power of the state via police to forcibly move them. But all they did was move them. They didn't move them into housing. They didn't move them someplace, to help them that would actually uplift them. All they did was act at the behest of the billionaire class to remove these undesirables from out of view of their good money that their patrons have paid for their tickets to come to the Super Bowl.
That's absolutely right. And what you're seeing in those 10 cities and what you're seeing in clearing out, it happens everywhere. And those 10 cities, by the way, have been expanding in LA and all around the nation. And it just gets cleared out. Los Angeles had a 16% rise in homelessness in 2020. There's a connection here of what's happening. And we know this is also happening in a pandemic. Where I live in the DC area, I think it was a month and a half ago, we saw these tents being cleared out. So whether it's a major football event or anytime dignitaries or someone that's coming to town, this is what happens. So the question is, well, what happens to the people they're moving? You've moved homelessness to another area. That's what usually happens. And as someone who grew up in New York City, I was first really made aware of this in a very real way with Rudy Giuliani, who did this all over New York City and displaced people all over New York City. And he got credit for it, and his star rose for it.
And when you think about the ways that the police are being used against actual residents of Inglewood to clear them away, to make way for the Super Bowl patrons, there's a lot of hand in hand between the NFL and police and militarization of police and this propaganda of U.S. military. But that lends itself back to, of course, these are the interests that protect the Capitol and protect the oligarchs themselves.
They do. They protect the Capitol, but I want to expound on your point you made. It's not just some random association. The Department of Defense pays the NFL money to advertise their military, or sometimes police as well, but advertise military that we see on TV when we see these celebrations at halftime, when we see these banners for the promotion of military, when we see this pageantry. The Department of Defense is paying for that because they know the NFL is so popular that it's like in the best commercial you could possibly have. It's not done by happenstance. It's done with your tax dollars.
That's right. That's right. All right. So I want us to take a look. I want us to move along here. because there are other elements at play in addition to, so here's the odd thing to me, Chuck. Like, I think after Kaepernick, a lot of people's eyes began to be opened about exactly the kind of establishment that the NFL was. Not that it was ever a secret before, that this was a bunch of rich racist white guys, watching their black bucks on the field. Like, everybody pretty much knew that. But I think it became so crystal clear to people in so many ways, especially in ways that you have pointed out, where very much lesser talented white quarterbacks have gotten the call over Kaepernick, but all have nothing to do very much with Kaepernick's skill level and his ability to play, but everything to do with the political stance that he took.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if I said names like Mike Glennon and Jeff Driscoll, nobody watching would even know who those names are unless they're a hardcore sports fan. But these are names of people who started maybe 7 or 8, were signed by 7 different teams and started 9 games since Kaepernick was blackballed. So when people tell me, well, he wasn't a good player, I'm like, okay, well, I need you to speak up about these white bums. Tell me how they're good. They didn't go to the Super Bowl. They didn't go to back-to-back playoffs and go crazy in those playoffs. So there's that crowd, which is just delusional. But what we've learned from Kaepernick, which a lot of us knew already, but everybody should, with a brain cell should know, is that the NFL cares about profit first and winning second. And when profit and winning collide, they will always choose profit. Every single team blackball Kaepernick, not one team, not 2 teams, not 3 teams, all 32. They felt it wasn't in their interest to hire Kaepernick, that it was bad business. That having someone who is against police getting away with murder is not something we want to support. So he's blackballed. But that informs our discussion on why there's so few black coaches. Because in the NFL, they believe black coaches are bad business. That there's something psychic that a large white Trumpian fan base, very Trumpian fan base, psychically wants the white leader directing the black players under their tutelage. And by listening to me because of the plays that I designed, you succeeded. There's a psychic value in that. And that's one of the reasons overall that if it comes between a black coach and a white coach, besides all your regular racist reasons, on top of it, some are making racist business decisions, just as they did with Colin Kaepernick.
Always. That is in every single aspect of American work culture, in my opinion, at least from my experience. I have absolutely seen. Right. I mean, as long as it keeps black and brown and women down and gays down, if they lose a few dollars, so what? You kept all the marginalized people that you wanted out to begin with, or kept them at a certain level that they were comfortable with. Tunde, if we could cue up A7, because I want to circle back to something that you said about the issue about Kaepernick is very closely tied to this hiring discrimination that black coaches are facing. And the NFL, I mean, they are marketing geniuses, like just amazing. And later in the conversation, Chuck, I want us to talk about why the NFL has such a hold over us. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I consider us to be politically aware people. I look at the NFL, I see it exactly for what it is. And I was blown away by the 2 previous weekends of NFL playoff games that we had. They were you know what I mean? So anyway, we'll get back to that. We'll get to those contradictions in a moment. But from 2.5 years ago, Roger Goodell, after receiving so much negative press and controversial press around the exclusion of Colin Kaepernick from the league and all that related news, entered into a partnership with Jay-Z's Rock Nation. And Jay-Z is allowing himself, I think, to be the blackface of the NFL for all intents and purposes. He is there to re-legitimize the NFL. No. The NFL is cool again. We don't have to boycott their Super Bowl halftimes anymore. Jay-Z is involved now, guys. Y'all can watch again. So I want us to go back to that odd presser he held with Roger Goodell back in August of 2019 when they announced the partnership. And I think this is going to be Jay-Z responding to the question about supporting more protests, and specifically if more players decided to kneel in support of Colin Kaepernick, but ultimately to protest police brutality. Let's take a look at that clip today.
Okay, I think we've past kneeling. I think it's time to go into actionable items.
Do you want people to stop them?
No, I don't want people to stop protesting at all. Kneeling, I know we're stuck on it because it's a real thing, but it's a form of protest. I support protests across the board. We need to bring light to the issue. I think everyone knows what the issue is, and we're done with that. Everyone knows what you know what the issue is? You know why we were kneeling? Okay, do you know the issue? Yeah, do you know the issue? Yes, we all know the issue now. Okay, next, where are we moving on next? And I'm not, again, so to be clear for the room, I'm not minimizing that part of it because that has to happen. That's a necessary part of the process. But now we all know what's going on. What are we going to do? How are we going to stop? Because the kneeling was not about a job. It was about injustice. Let me bring attention to injustice. Everyone's saying, how are you going forward? And Cap doesn't have a job. This wasn't about him having a job.
That sounds a little weird. I mean, it sounded weird at the time, but it sounds even weirder now, Chuck Modiano, because, we're just a couple weeks away from Martin Luther King's holiday, and we know that the March on Washington was about jobs and justice, right? And many those in the Black freedom community and the Black, civil rights movement attach jobs and justice together. And even though Jay-Z was not specifically talking about Black coaches in the NFL, he was talking about bringing light to injustices in the community, but he's giving cover to Roger Goodell's culture of racism, of misogyny, and denying qualified Black people jobs.
Well, absolutely. And you know what? I will challenge the notion that we know what the problem is, because Amir Locke this week just got murdered, and it looked a lot like Breonna Taylor did when we were marching in 2020, going to the home and murdering. And what the difference is, in 2020, there were people in the streets, and we don't see people in the streets in 2022. If we know what's going on, why do we have a president who increased the police budget to hire more police and give more resources to police in local areas? So we've regressed mightily since 2020. And part of the reason we regressed is because we stopped fighting. But there was some initial gains in 2020. There were some initial police departments that were cutting their funding. There was some initial campuses that were getting police contracts off their campuses. There was Denver, Colorado ended qualified immunity. And many of those gains since then are starting to be reversed. And now we're starting to be increased funding. So we're going actually in the wrong direction right now because we stopped protesting. And a lot of that has to do with the effect of Biden coming in and not being Trump and soothing people, but having policies like Trump, but have more kinder, gentler words. So yes, the NFL is a microcosm of that, of everything we're talking about. But I don't believe in we know what the problem is. I still think we don't know what the problem is.
Infinite Content just ran us some more bucks. Thank you, Infinite Content. Infinite Content says, Chuck and Kim, a friendly reminder to all that the Peterman, 6 interceptions in one game, is still in the league, but Cap is not.
Nathan Peterman. Yeah. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, go ahead.
No. It's fine. I was just making sure I didn't miss anything. But no, I mean, Chuck, this is not a meritocracy. It don't mean just because you are good at something does not necessarily mean that someone's going to call you for a job. I mean, you kind of have to be the right kind of person here. Like, I feel as though white players have the freedom to be as political if they choose. Tom Brady, very famous MAGA supporter of Donald Trump. That's his boy, right? But black athletes and black coaches are not afforded those same luxuries, and oftentimes it has to do with it does not meet the approval of the white owner, franchise owner, team owner, and the white fan base, because you need to shut up and dribble. You need to stick to sports. How has this changed, do you think, the NFL's labor force post-cap? How do you think players have become more emboldened to speak out about injustices? You know, they're able to do these symbolic things and put stuff on their helmets and jerseys, or was this just another level of pacification that we have all sort of accepted by now?
I think there was a legitimate outpouring. I think over 54 players kneeled in that first year. Nearly all of them black, I might add. I think Travis Kelce kneeled like for 5 seconds one game. But no, that's changed. We have to go beyond Kaepernick. Eric Reed, who was right there every step of the way by Kaepernick, was also blackballed. People forget that. And even sometimes myself, I have to always say Kaepernick and Eric Reed, because he's losing millions of dollars at home for standing right by Kaepernick. And not only that, Eric Reed was a huge voice for retired players and calling out the bad collective bargaining agreement. So the other players are watching this. And if a player of Eric Reed's caliber, who led his team in tackles that year, solo tackles, or a player like Kaepernick gets blackballed, what does that say about all these marginal players who kneeled and got blackballed? But you have plausible deniability because they weren't that great and you could plausibly cut them. And when you see that happens, and if I take up for that player, they'll say, oh, he sucked. Well, other marginal players are paying attention. So this has an effect. And I might add, Brian Flores spoke out against Breonna Taylor and spoke out against policing last year. And Brian Flores, the coach of the Miami Dolphins, the former coach who put the lawsuit together, won 8 of his last 9 games, has had 2 straight winning seasons. Jim Caldwell had back-to-back winning seasons 4 years ago, can't get hired. Lovie Smith was 10-6, he got fired. He's the last coach. Why are all the people who got fired over winning seasons black?
Well, let's get into that. Tunde, if you could pop up A8 for me. This is Chuck Modiano's piece for Deadspin. QB guru Jim Caldwell is Exhibit A in Brian Flores' lawsuit, and we got the receipts. Chuck Modiano's got all the receipts. And you just laid out a cursory introduction about what's going on with these black coaches. And obviously this is a systemic problem. This goes back all the way from the NFL's inception. The reluctance to put black people in positions of leadership, whether it's on the field as quarterbacks or as coaches or coordinators. And it took a long time for brothers to even get to the coaches and coordinators position. But now here we are at the head coach position in 2022, 3 years after Jay-Z formed his partnership with Roc Nation in the NFL. We are still down to one lone black head coach. And Brian Flores' lawsuit is almost amazing timing, because here we are at the point of the NFL season where there are a lot of new hires for vacant coaching positions. And I saw you tweeting ESPN reporter Adam Schefter earlier, indicating that a lot of these new hires have gone to white coaches, not to black coaches, even though some people are not totally out of the running in some things. But talk about your piece and how Jim Caldwell, who you call a QB guru, who coached Peyton Manning and Matthew Stafford, and who was the third quarterback that he coached?
People forget he was the offensive coordinator for Baltimore's Joe Flacco when he won the Super Bowl. Now, for people who don't follow football, getting Joe Flacco to win a Super Bowl is a phenomenal achievement.
Yes.
He's not Peyton Manning. And he called all the plays. And when a white person calls all the plays, when a white coach calls all the plays for someone as limited, I'm trying to be kind, but as limited as Joe Flacco, they call him a genius. He say he has a brilliant offensive mind. They use this language talking about his intelligence. They don't do that for Jim Caldwell.
Chuck, how come, I know the answer, but I just want you to tell me, how come all of these, not all, but over, let's say, the past, 4 or 5 seasons, a lot of never been road tested, people who don't have head coaching experience, who may have been a coordinator for a couple of years, these young white guys, the McVays, the Shanahans, they get the calls, but the black coaches keep being told, hey, you got to keep on pushing. You got to just keep working your way up. And some of these guys have got literally so many years of league experience, either as players or as coaches or a combination of both. But hey, that young offensive genius, you got to give him a try. You got to give him a contract.
When you hear someone say someone has a brilliant offensive mind, that means they have no resume to speak of. So you make up these subjective white terms. That's what they say about these. Or Sean McVay, they don't call it the Nepotism Football League for nothing. So being in proximity to a perceived quote-unquote white genius is the greatest credential you can have to be hired. Being known by Sean McVay, being known by Bill Belichick, even though nearly all of his assistants flop, is proximity to perceived white genius. You need the white validation by someone white people and white fans respect. Your record doesn't count. And there are a number of black coaches I could point to, Byron Leftwich, Eric Bieniemy, but I focus on Jim Caldwell because I don't know anyone who has been better than Jim Caldwell. Jim Caldwell has been so good, even his supporters don't understand how good he has been. So, for instance, if a regular person sees he went 9-7 and 9-7 with the Detroit Lions, you'd be like, he went 9-7 and 9-7. But if you look at his roster and you look at Pro Football Focus, predicted him to win 4 games and 5 games, and he bested them by 8 games, you have to say, well, damn, he was supposed to win 4 and 5 games, and he won 9. And what did the GM say? Quote unquote, 9 wins is not nearly enough. So they fired the black man. And the GM, Bob Quinn, hired his friend Matt Patricia. And the GM was sentenced for 3 seasons of 6 wins, 3 wins, and 5 wins for not blaming himself for putting a horrible roster together and putting it on the black man. That's the truth.
That is the truth. I remember when Matt Patricia got that hire. I was like, really? They fired Jim Caldwell for him?
For him. That was his boy.
Listen.
That was his boy. Bob Quinn is a former Patriot, and Matt Patricia was a former Patriot, so he hired his boy. So it was an act of nepotism. So what I say is, and nepotism is an indirect form of racism, but it's not a direct form of racism. What I say is,
it's the legacy hire.
It's a legacy hire. So what I say is, Jim Caldwell was fired of nepotism, but going 4 cycles and not being rehired is blatant racism. That means the rest of the league took the opinion of Bob Quinn over all the data, all the evidence, any objective evidence of a great coach. Every player loves him, but that wasn't important. So when a black coach gets fired, it's a stigma. When a good white coach gets fired, it's an opportunity.
Exactly. And I wanted us to put a pin, not necessarily put a pin, but as we now at the opportunities that are there or probably not there for black coaches, when I see certain stories come out, especially, I feel like this Brian Flores thing is really about to open the floodgates with black coaches coming out and telling their actual experiences. If I have this correct, I believe Hugh Jackson, former coach, confirmed what Brian Flores said in his lawsuit that, the owners will pay black coaches to try to tank teams. $100,000 a loss, Chuck Modiano.
Yeah, $100,000. And for those who don't know, if you have worse positioning, you can get a high draft pick to maybe get a great player. So they were asking them to tank, and then they have to live with those losses and they get fired. And when they get fired, they say they stunk. And I'm going to bring it back to Jim Caldwell one more time, if you forgive me this. But he used to be on the Colts, and he went to the Super Bowl in his very first season. And he won his first 14 games, 14-0. Was about to have a 16-0 season. They made him sit as starters, so he didn't get to go 16-0. And then after that, 2 years later, Peyton Manning has neck surgery. So here's what they do. They give him a horrible quarterback. His name is Curtis Painter. Nobody's probably heard of him because he's never, ever won a game in the league. And they made him start. And Caldwell wanted to get Kyle Orton off waivers. Kyle Orton was a decent, serviceable quarterback. In other words, they did not pay Caldwell to tank. They gave him the worst possible quarterback to make it impossible to win. So he went 2-14 with a horrible quarterback. They knew it. They called it suck for luck. It was the suck for luck because Andrew Luck was the top pick. And if you get the worst record, you get Andrew Luck, this great quarterback coming out of college. And then they did Caldwell dirty and fired him after not giving him the proper quarterback to win games. And so he's been done dirty so many times. And Caldwell's critics say, look, he was 2-14 that year. Yeah, well, if you had a high school quarterback, you'd go 2-14 too. You'd probably go 2-16. You'd probably go 2-16 because the 2 wins he had with Daniel Orlovsky were the only 2 of his career. But I'm going to shut up now.
You're good. You're good, Chuck. Yeah, I love to see you fired up like this.
Man, I'm angry, Kim. This is why I come on your show.
Good. I love that. And I want you to continue with that anger because we're wrapping up, but not quite, everybody, because, like I said, the NFL is racist, capitalist, and misogynistic. And please know that women are not treated well within these franchises and within these institutions. And I want us to, if we could, This is going to be about 4 minutes, gang. But trust me, you guys already know I would not put together 4 minutes of anything if I did not think it was extremely compelling and of your interest. And if you didn't go back and actually look at this hearing on C-SPAN, I assure you, the clips that they showed on television are not quite the clips that I think that you guys needed to hear. So what we're about to hear, in case you did not hear about this, yesterday there was a congressional roundtable. It did not rise to the level of congressional hearing for reasons I'm not quite sure of, but there was a congressional roundtable in which I believe it was the House Oversight Committee heard statements from former employees of the Washington football team franchise, the newly christened Washington Commanders, because they had a racial slur for their franchise name for many decades, and lots of people saw nothing wrong with it except the indigenous people who have been screaming about it, pulling their hair out about it for a very, very long time, because for obvious reasons. And we're going to get to that actually at the end of this. But I want us to take a listen to these people who spoke, and I'm going to give you their names in order. The first person you're going to hear speak is Anna Nunes. Next is Emily Applegate, followed by Brad Baker and Rachel Engelson. All of these people are former employees. The three women say that they experienced sexual harassment constantly, on a constant basis, while working at the Washington football team franchise. And they said that they oftentimes had no recourse. They were unprotected. And I wanted to lead off with the Latina sister just so we get, there was no black people testifying, by the way. My guess is because the Washington football team only hires black people to run on the field. Like, you actually can't work in the office at the Washington football team unless you're the president, by the way, which but that's a whole nother story. But anyway, let's take a look at this mashup of clips from this congressional roundtable that was held on Capitol Hill yesterday.
Around the same time, I was also sexually harassed by the director of pro personnel. I connected with this individual because he was of Latino background, and there were only a handful of non-white employees there. What started as friendly and professional conversations quickly turned into him texting inappropriate messages that made me feel extremely uncomfortable. In one exchange, he told me I looked nice and mentioned the things he would do to me. I responded back via text and told him to never say things like that to me again. I was afraid to push back like that because he was more senior than me, and it shouldn't have been my responsibility. But I knew there was no real HR, and no one would have done anything to make him stop, so I had to stand up for myself. This man had a well-known history of sexual harassment with other employees and interns, so I also felt ashamed that I became another victim of his.
On a daily basis, I was sexually harassed by my direct boss, the chief marketing officer of the team. Every day, I was forced into uncomfortable conversations about my body and about my appearance. I was told to wear tight outfits to events so clients had something to look at. I was asked invasive questions about my dating life, specifically if I was interested in older men because my boss was significantly older than me. I was told I wasn't allowed to wear flat shoes because he liked the way my body looked better when I was in high heels. My photograph was taken without my permission and passed to other executives throughout the team by my boss. I was called Jewish slurs that referred to a non-Jewish woman that you are sexualizing. A slur, which I will not repeat, a rabbi described as simply indefensible, condescending, racist, and misogynistic. When I stood up for myself, I was told that I was a distraction, as if it was my fault that grown men in a professional setting could not control themselves.
In the early summer of 2008, a normal production meeting with the video department was wrapping up when Larry Michael, then executive producer of media and one of Snyder's top lieutenants, asked me and two other male producers to stay behind and shut the door. The female members of the department were dismissed. Larry Michael told us that the owner had a special project for us and needed us to edit together a video of the good bits from our cheerleader calendar video shoot. It wasn't hard to put two and two together. Larry Michael, one of Snyder's top confidants, has tasked us with producing a video for Snyder of sexually suggestive footage of cheerleaders, obviously unbeknownst to any of the women involved. One of the senior producers said he'd take care of it, and later on, while passing through the editing suite, I saw several images on both the editing monitor and the monitor of our tape deck that featured the cheerleaders posing for their photo shoot, but it was like outtakes. and their breasts and pubic areas were exposed. It became crystal clear that my worst suspicions were true. The video department had been told to edit together lewd footage of the cheerleaders at the request of Dan Snyder.
When I initially reported sexual harassment to my boss, I was terrified. I was only 24, and the man who sexually harassed me was old enough to be my father, and he also was considered the voice of the team in the public sphere. So to me, the power that he held in his position and his close personal relationship with Daniel Snyder was enough for me to reconsider anything. And at the time, I didn't know and realize that 55% of victims experience retaliation after speaking up or making a claim. I still decided to tell my boss about my harasser's public comments about my appearance, his unwanted kisses on the cheek, and the emails about special gifts he expected from me. When I told my boss, we agreed that nothing would happen if I reported it to the person who was supposedly running HR at that point. And so my boss called my harasser on the phone. Mind you, we were in 2 different locations. I was in Maryland and he was in Virginia, so this had to be done via phone call. I was in the room when my boss called him to tell him to leave me alone, and it's a memory I'll never forget because I distinctly remember hearing my harasser yell through the phone, "What the fuck is she thinking?" And I just kind of muted everything after that.
Boy, did I learn a lot at the Washington football team under top executives and Dan Snyder. Let me share some of the highlights I learned during my tenure with the team. I learned what a pearl necklace is while in a marketing meeting with my boss and male coworkers. And it's not the kind you receive from your grandmother at 8th grade graduation. For those of you who didn't know, like my mom, it's an offensive sexual term. I learned from another high-level executive that I should wear low-cut blouses when making sales pitches to potential suite owners. Apparently, it generates faster sales. I also learned from this same executive that the best way to avoid an uncomfortable situation in front of potential suite owners is to just do what my boss asks, which on one occasion involved him tossing me in the air to do a cheerleader stunt for a client while I was wearing a skirt. I learned on one specific occasion that when I was asked by my boss to attend a networking event, and to dress cute, it was actually an orchestration by him and Dan Snyder to put me in a compromising sexual situation. I learned that placing me strategically by the owner at a work dinner after this networking event was not for me to discuss business, but to allow him, Dan Snyder, to place his hand on my thigh under the table. I learned how to discreetly remove a man's unwanted hand from my thigh at a crowded dinner table at a busy restaurant to avoid a scene. I learned that job survival meant I should continue my conversation with another coworker rather than to call out Dan Snyder right then in the moment. I also learned later that evening how to awkwardly laugh when Dan Snyder aggressively pushed me towards his limo with his hand on my lower back, encouraging me to ride with him to my car. I learned how to continue to say no, even though a situation was getting more awkward, uncomfortable, and physical. I learned that the only reason Dan Snyder removed his hand from my back and stopped pushing me towards his limo was because his attorney intervened and said, Dan, this is a bad idea. A very bad idea, Dan." I learned that I should remove myself from Dan's grip while his attorney was distracting him. I also learned at that moment during an unspoken conversation between my boss and I that my boss was not there to look out for me. He was there to listen to any directive his boss, Dan Snyder, had given to him at my cost.
You know, guys, the last testimony we just heard right there from Tiffany Johnson, I put hers last on purpose because I know that many of us listening can relate to exactly that sort of defensive mechanism that women have to do. We have to politely say no instead of saying, "Can you please get your hands the fuck off of me?" You can't speak up for yourself forcefully and directly when you're dealing with men of power. No, you always have to put yourself in a position that you are, deferential to them, or in a way that you have to placate them in the ways that women are routinely violated in the workplace. And Chuck Modiano, The Washington football team has got a lot of scrutiny, a lot of bad press. There was a report, or rather an investigation done, and the Wilkerson report, which these former Washington football team employees are demanding be released, that Goodell is not releasing. We're seeing a lot of class solidarity here, right? The billionaires are protecting the billionaires. Goodell is protecting his league's owners. And even though the football team is apparently egregious with this sort of behavior, I am disinclined to believe that it's only happening in DC. I'm sure this is probably standard operating procedure at most NFL franchises.
Yeah, newsflash, Daniel Snyder is not the only misogynistic pig owner in the NFL. There are a lot of them. This is what happens when you have power that could never be held accountable. And to your point about class solidarity, there's a name for that. It's called a common interest agreement. So Roger Goodell and Dan Snyder have a common interest agreement in that if there's anything in that report that they deem will be harmful to either Dan Snyder or the NFL, they could not make it public. So all of this dirt, as far as I understand, I'm not a lawyer, I don't know how much this could be challenged, but as far as I understand it, the dirt that we need to expose, that we need to excavate, we may never, ever see because of this common interest agreement of class solidarity amongst billionaires.
Chuck Modiano, it appears as though the NFL is beyond reproach, like most white male billionaires and multi-billion organizations. The NFL is beyond reproach. I mean, again, this was a congressional roundtable that these people testified in front of. These people are coming to Congress. Like, Congress, can you help us? Because there is nothing else to be done. The NFL essentially operates lawlessly and like a cartel, and because they have the money to pay, fines, or I thought it was ridiculous that Dan Snyder was fined $10 million for the workplace culture, at least as a part of the NFL investigation about its findings about the workplace culture at the football team. I'm like, dog, he had $10 million in his pocket.
In his couch. No, he had $10 million slipped between the couch. That's how much money this man has. $10 million is nothing. There's no accountability. The only possible way I see accountability is from righteous media. Now, an incredible amount of media in the NFL, just like in politics, are bought off. They carry water for the NFL, and an enormous amount, or they protect their access to get quotes from the team. And so we're dealing with that. However, to use a much less severe precedence, everything we know about steroids in baseball, for the most part, came through media digging and media court leaks of sealed records. The reason you knew they went after Barry Bonds, driven by racism, by the way, but that's for another day. And they leaked court records. And there were some 2003 tests, and they leaked. This was done by reporters. So if that could be leaked, I'm waiting for the WikiLeaks or the Snowden to leak some of these emails, leak some of these Dan Snyder reports, NFL reports. That's what I want to see. And I just want someone to step up and do that. Whether that happens, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, at least some of those leaks are part of the reation why John Gruden lost his job earlier in the season. So I'm sure that scared the shit out of Dan Snyder.
Oh yeah, he's locking everything down. He is locking everything down. Triple encryption.
Chuck, before I let you go, I feel comfortable asking you this because I feel as though perhaps we share similar contradictions, right? I mean, we're both American kids. We grew up here in the United States. I learned the game of professional football as a teen and as a young adult girl because, I like boys, and boys watch football on Sunday. So if you want to get the boys' attention or in search of male attention, whatever, be able to talk football with these dudes, right? And
by the way, I know where you're going before you go there, but go ahead, continue.
Well, I'm just saying the NFL truly has a cultural hold over this country, regardless of socioeconomical, racial background. Yeah. A lot of people consume the NFL, and that's why they are this massive juggernaut that they are. But come on, we stand with workers. We stand on the
Yes.
side of racial justice. We oppose the oligarchy. We oppose
Yes.
the gentrification and displacement of black people to accommodate NFL stadiums. Why the fuck do we watch? Why do we watch football,
Right.
Chuck Modiano?
I get it all the time, and I knew you were going to come with it, and that's why I like being on your show, because that's a very important question. And I got my protest friends. People know I cover protests in the streets, and, you know, they're breaking it down. I don't watch football and exploitation, da. I get it. So let me start off by saying this. Anyone who boycotts, I got great love for you. I appreciate you. I respect your decision. Let me tell you why I personally don't boycott. And beyond I grew up watching sports and this and that. All that misogyny we just listened to, all this racism about coaching, all this racism about Kaepernick is an incredible platform. And what I mean by that is there's no greater platform than the NFL. There's a reason their commercials at the Super Bowl cost more than any other commercial. There's a reason why the top 20 telecasts in any year are all NFL games. There's nothing even close. And if everyone who has the skill and the knowledge to fight racism and fight misogyny and fight capitalism and fight owners in those spaces left, you just have, I believe, more bonding on all of those isms without interruption of those isms. And I don't believe we've hit a point where like the people are boycotting or having any kind of a big effect. There's no tipping point in that. So when we say boycott, it might sound good to me personally. But, you know, if I write a Jim Caldwell article so I could call out the racism in very precise ways, I am, on some level, trying to interrupt some kind of racism. It doesn't mean the owners are going to change their ways, but it could mean some fans are looking at things differently. So I don't know if it's the best thing to let all the racial bonding, all the racist bonding, because now here's where I do think it's a problem. You don't just watch the games for fun and don't critique all those isms. That's a package deal. So if I'm going to take the package deal and watch these games, you're damn sure I'm going to call out all the racism, all the sexism, all the homophobia on a daily basis.
And that's why we appreciate you, Chuck Modiano. We love the radical whites. Yes, come through, John Brown Brigade. That's what I'm talking about.
I'm just trying to follow your lead.
Hey, but Chuck, we need people like you out here, Chuck. we need a lot more of you out here. Not you. We need people like you. We need more people like you to come on out and be with us so we can all get free, because you know the system is keeping us all down. But I respect you always, because you never bullshit your privilege, and I respect the shit out of you for that, because you know some semi-woke white guys be like, hey, well, you know, I had experienced some prejudice once. It's like, nigga, shut the fuck up. Nobody cares about the time somebody was rude to you and shake stack. Nobody cares anyway. But I appreciate you, Chuck Modiano, because again, you put your privilege on the line out here. You have suffered, you know, what it's like to be a N-word lover. You know what I mean? So I know you get some of that too. So I want to say that thank you. I appreciate you joining here on the show. And thank you so much for always amplifying what we're doing here on Burn It Down with Kim Brown. That really means a lot to me. Thank you.
Well, I always appreciate being here. Can't wait for to do this again.
Absolutely. Guys, head on over to Deadspin and check out Chuck's latest piece. It is titled QB Guru Jim Caldwell is Exhibit A in Brian Flores lawsuit. It is a deep dive. It is a revealing insight into Brian Flores' lawsuit and the systemic ways in which the NFL has kept black coaches out of these head coaching positions. Chuck Modiano, thank you so much again. Shout out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Hey, Noli D, thank you, my darling, for your super chat support. Thank you, Tasia, for the super chat support. I so appreciate that, guys. You know, my phone was going off while me and Chuck were talking, and then I get distracted, so I wasn't checking the phone. But anyway, thank you all so much for your support. And Molly has already told me that we've already gotten a merch order, so that's very exciting. So patrons, it's going to be an exclusive to you for an entire week. Patreon.com/BIDWKB. If you want to support the channel, you can do so really on the low for just $2 a month. Real quick, guys. I did something I was not supposed to do today. I was supposed to be a part of a Black History panel with Chaffey College. and I got my dates and my times confused. It was going to be Jared Ball and a couple other people, and I know Jared was part of it. So let me just apologize to Keith and the good folks at Chaffey College for missing your event today. It was a my bad sort of situation. I got my dates and my times confused, so my apologies for that if you were looking for me. Maybe y'all didn't even know I was doing the joke, but it's all good. Guys, we're going to see you back here on Tuesday. For another episode of Burn It Down with Kim Brown. Noli D, thank you so much, baby. Snack Panther, Schultze, One Hondo, come through. Ursula, my love. Thank you. Lateef, Chuck Diesel, my brother. I love you so much. Martin A, we got some new people in here. Listen, guys, don't forget to subscribe and follow us places around the internet at BIDWKB, Instagram, Facebook. We're on TikTok and Twitch, Northern Witch over there on Twitch. Thank you so much, darling. So guys, we'll see you back here. Thanks again to our guest, Chuck Modiano, for a fantastic conversation about how the NFL. Oh, that's right. Hold on. Thank you. Tunde's going to turn on his video, guys. He's going to turn on his camera and model some of this mercharoo. This is, if you're wearing it, you are modeling it. Wouldn't you agree, Tunde? I call that a model. That sounds like modeling to me. So now, I don't think Tunde's going to put on the hoodie with my face on the front, even though I have implored him to do so. I'm just kidding. But yes, so we've got hoodies. I'm not sure which one Tunde is about to don for us to begin with. We do have vinyl stickers, and we have tote bag, and we have long sleeve shirts and hoodies. Now, I am a person partial to tank tops, so I'm very much looking forward to tank top season, and we're going to get the BIDWKB tank tops on and popping. But is your camera on, Tunde? Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. Come on, Zoolander. You're supposed to be way yes. Hey, y'all. Tunde goes to the gym, so we actually might be in for a treat. Who could really say? I don't really know what to expect when Tunde turns on his camera. But we're really excited about that. And a couple of upcoming announcements. We're going to have JB Font on the show. On Tuesday, we're going to be talking about the housing crisis and the issue of unhoused people not having access to affordable housing, especially during the pandemic. And that's going to be exciting. And the Tuesday after that, the 15th, I'm very excited to announce that we're going to have Dr. Sharice Burden Staley on the show with us to talk about W.E.B. Du Bois. It is Black History Month after all, people. I know y'all ain't forget. I know the critical race theorists and the anti-critical race theorists have got your children out here scared to learn about Black history, or the teachers scared to teach about Black history. But yes, Black History Month is here. And Dr. CBS is going to be on with us to talk about Du Bois. But I want her to talk to us about Du Bois from the perspective of when Du Bois said, you know what, fuck this shit. I'm going to Africa. I'm done. I have given up on this stupid ass country. I want to hear more about that. I want to hear more about that. So I'm very excited to have Dr. CBS on. And how come I don't see you? All I see is B. I'm looking on Zoom. I'm looking through Zoom. Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought I was going to see it on Zoom first. It's fine. I could go back to the interwebs. Oh, okay. Let's go. Turn it up. I still don't see you. It's still very much delayed. Yeah, it's delayed. Well, then my shit must be way delayed.
I was muted there for a sec.
Well, that's good. Okay. Well, y'all turn it. Can we get a turn around? Turn around.
There's nothing on the back. It's clear.
Hey, I dig it. I like that. I mean, yes, and that's the new one, right? That's with the logo.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I dig it. So guys, yeah, because we're not garish out here. I ain't trying to have y'all walking around like with the Fendi logos everywhere, Michael Kors and shit. Let's keep this shit simple. Well, that's how I view it.
So here's what the deal is we're keeping it simple for now, but we're coming with all sorts of quotes and things like that on shirts. We're just kind of doing the rollout a little slowly, just to get the hang of it here, because this is not any of our fields, so we're trying to keep it small to begin with. But over the course of time, we're gonna have a lot more things. We'll run a few collections, things like that that kind of correspond with one another and do a lot of sets and things like that. But that's for later on down the line. But for now, we've just got the initial swag out. I like it. It's clean. It feels good. Looks good.
Tunde said it washed up good. How it wash and dry up, Tunde?
Pretty good. If anybody has any issues, obviously let us know. But yeah, Molly should be dropping a link either in the chat here or I'm sorry, not in the chat here, on Patreon for the first week. Patreon exclusive for the first week, and then after that we'll open it up to everybody. But yeah, we're here. Get your swag.
So guys, can I say this real quick? This is a little bit different for me because I don't see myself as a brand, and I am still not a brand. I am Kim. I am a person. Okay. But what the merch does for us, it helps. It's a revenue stream. Let's keep it a buck. Me, Tunde, and Molly, we do this for love, and we do this because we love y'all. We do this because we want to tell y'all stories that other places are not going to tell you. So look at this as a fundraising thing as well. If you buy some merch, you are helping the channel, right? So I appreciate that, and I'm sure the only tote bag. You got the tote bags, Tunde?
Yeah, we got the tote bag. I gotta break it out. Do you really want to see it right now?
No, that's fine. It's fine. Totally fine. The tote bag has my face on it. And
actually, no, I got you.
The only one who's going to buy that tote bag with my face on it is going to be my mother, which is fine. Although, fellas, where my fellas at? KFZ 24/7, 40 ounce J's, Latif, Chuck Diesel. I would respect the shit out y'all if y'all rocked a Burn It Down with Kim Brown tote bag to Aldi next time you went to the store with my face on it.
Get your tote bags.
Hey, yay!
Get the tote bags so people can know you're a little aggressive when you go shopping. You know what I mean?
Oh, Christmas. Man, I hope none of Tucker Carlson's viewers catch you in Aldi with your Burn It Down with Kim Brown joint on Snack Panther.
They definitely don't shop at Aldi. It's fine.
Yeah, that's true. You don't know that. You don't know that, do they?
I know. Yes. They probably do.
So guys, that's it. That's our merch. That's our initial merch offering. If you guys want to support, the link will be available to everybody next Friday. But patrons, is available to you right now. Exclusive. Thank you all for everything. Thank you all for your support. Pookie Wood, I hope you're warm down there in Texas, bro. Try to stay warm, bro. I know Greg Abbott's trying to freeze y'all niggas out. Try to stay warm, sir. It's going to be okay. Thank you guys so much for everything. We'll see you back here on Tuesday for the next episode of Burn It Down with Kim Brown. Don't forget, COVID is still out here. Do what you will to protect yourself. On behalf of me, Tunde and Molly, see y'all later. Bye-bye.